I watched Jake Paul's documentary, so you don't have to. So for those of you who might not know what's going on, this week Jake Paul dropped his new documentary on Netflix called The Problem Child. And immediately upon announcement, as one would expect, Twitter wasn't really receiving it that positively, but I decided that I wanted to give it a fair shot, watch the whole thing through, and then give you guys my thoughts. Beginning the documentary, in the first 30 minutes, there's nothing really new shown that we don't already know about. They're clearly just trying to set up the scene for anybody that might have heard Jake Paul's name but don't really know anything about him. So they end up going really in depth between Jake and Logan's interviews where they're just really talking about their Vine come up, their YouTube, their controversies. But to me, as somebody that was chronically online during those years, I just didn't really get much out of it. After that, they end up transitioning into this segment where they're talking about Jake's dad, Greg Paul. And this is really something they try to cover throughout the entirety of the documentary. But both Jake and Logan Paul talk about their father and how he would be abusive throughout their childhood. And what I thought was really strange is then they cut to an interview from their dad where he's basically denying all of this. He also goes into a bit of a monologue about how good of a father he is. And I'm not even paraphrasing here. He says, if you give me your child for 2 weeks, they will come out of it a better kid. Of course, he also has to mention how emotional and soft this generation is. The whole interview was pretty strange, and I feel like him talking about emotions in that kind of way really did confirm what Jake and Logan were saying. After that, they begin to touch on the rivalry between the two brothers. And to be completely honest, I do find their rivalry to be pretty interesting. They end up cutting back and forth between both Jake and Logan's interviews, and it's pretty clear that both of them are convinced that they're the superior brother. They're both talking about how many girls they get, how much clout they have, how many subscribers they have. And it's funny because they're talking about their internet beef as in the past tense, but it's very clear that their mindsets haven't changed at all. It's more like they agreed to disagree and moved past it rather than actually confronted their ego problems. There's actually a really memorable quote in the film where Logan says that Jake has tricked everybody into thinking he's a boxer, but actually he's a promoter. And this is definitely the point that they're trying to hammer in throughout the movie. To me, I actually find a lot of irony in Logan saying that. I feel like the route that Jake is on right now is they're really trying to set in that he is in fact a real boxer. They interview Jake's close business partner and he talks about how people would criticize the opponents over and over again. And I definitely do agree that it seems like no matter what, Jake Paul can't win. Whatever opponent he chooses, there's going to be some sort of criticism. But the hardest pill to swallow about the whole thing is that the entire story is actually leading up to him losing to the first boxer he actually goes up against, which I definitely feel like takes out a lot of the punch in them trying to say that he is a real boxer and you're just invalidating who he goes up against. Something that is really nice actually is near the end of the film, they covered Logan and Jake's relationship. They talk about how they've had each other over the years and how really nobody else can understand what that position is like except for the two of them. And I definitely agree, the only people that can truly understand that level of fame and really the position that both brothers were in are each other. It's a cute moment, it's wholesome, and when you see the two of them together, you really do want to root for them. After that, they have about 30 minutes or so left where they're covering Jake's previous boxing matches, which again, if you haven't been living under a rock the last couple years, you've definitely seen everything that needs to be covered about those. And literally before the end of the film, before they show Jake losing to Tommy Fury, they actually wrap back around to Greg Paul. I think the unsettling part for me is it's clear they're trying to get a little bit of that emotional and hard upbringing into the documentary, but Greg Paul himself isn't too much of a likable person, so it's hard to sit through those moments. Basically, moments right before Jake's biggest fight yet, which he loses, Logan and Greg Paul have a chat about how they did a birthday celebration and they talked about the abuse and everything got out of hand and they ended up having an argument. And Logan ends up telling his father, just say you love him. And then it just stops there. They don't wrap back around. They don't cover it again. That's actually just the end of that. And that's basically the entire contents of the whole movie. Now, something I do want to say is surprisingly, it's really well produced. The cinematography, the editing, and the music are all fantastic. I think at its core, it's such a hard story to tell because so much of it is already public online. So when it comes to the actual storyline of things, for me personally, it was just kind of hard to sit through. But you can definitely tell that they tried their best to make something that was quality. But anyways, those are all my thoughts. So I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.